What's good, guys? It is Sam here, back at you again with another video on my YouTube results and an update on the monetization for YouTube videos. Before I do that, make sure you press that red button and there's a little bell notification there. You just tap on that little bell notification. What that does is tells YouTube to notify you every time I post a new video. Now, with that being said, let's get into it. That's what she said. And I'm not a child, I just act like one. Or maybe I am a child. I don't know. Anyways, we are going into March 11th is tomorrow. And just give you some context. I started a YouTube channel in April of 2013 with my younger brother. You can go back and check out the horrible videos that we did back then. They are hilariously awkward to watch. And I definitely see those because, also, complete side note and tangent to what we were about to talk about, but through YouTube and doing this with my brother back in the day, I have created and still have the memories of my brother. My brother passed away, and through this YouTube channel, I have been able to capture some of those memories through the videos that we created. So I think that is something that I'm truly thankful for. And back in the day, 2013, I saw the potential, and I didn't actually... I knew it was there, but I wasn't there mentally. And I was in grad school, 2013, I think I was in grad school, or just, no, I think I had finished up grad school. I think I was finishing up the CFA exam, and I had, I wasn't consistently putting out content. I would do a couple videos and then I wouldn't do any videos. And then I would do a couple videos and I wouldn't do any videos. And this went on for almost 5 years of picking up and then stopping. And picking up and then stopping. And I was never consistent with it. There was no vision up here of... other than like making money, but the cliche that you probably heard before is if you focus on the money, you're going to lose. You're going to focus on something different, the bigger picture, and the money will come. And like, I've heard that many times, but it never really, I mean, I heard it, but it wasn't, I knew it like subconsciously, but I didn't really think about it. But when I'm looking back retrospectively, the results are speaking for themselves, and it's been about 130 days since I committed. And what got me to actually commit was creating that vision that was not about money. Money was involved, money was part of it, but it wasn't about the money. At the end of October in 2018, to give you context of what was going on, I had just moved from Florida to Massachusetts, started a new job, and was working on getting up to speed at this new job. And I was thinking, how do I want to live my life? What's the ideal way I want to live my life? Where do I want to be, geographically speaking, and what are the things that I enjoy doing that I want to do through the years in terms of at that moment, what are the things that I felt that I wanted to do? And I want to travel more, but more than that, I want the freedom to do anything I want to do. Like, if I want to go to California tomorrow and just chill, like, create content out there, then that's what I want to do. And have the freedom, both from a financial standpoint, but also from a time standpoint, more importantly, to not have to go to work. And creating more clarity around that. So asking myself where I wanted to live and I want to live more nomadically, meaning traveling perpetually until I find maybe some places that I would enjoy as a home base. And not necessarily one home base. More than likely multiple home bases around the world, not necessarily in the United States. I don't necessarily think I will be here in the United States in 10 years. Potentially, but I feel like I'm leaning more to move abroad for a bunch of different reasons. If you want to look at some of the videos, I talk about that on the channel. So created the vision. Then I backtracked into how much money I needed, right? So I needed, going through adding up how much am I paying for my student loans, all the different costs for food, for rent, etc., etc., etc. And it comes out to be just under $2,000 a month. So I decided to go with $3,000 because I knew there might be other things that come up. But I can consistently live on less than $2,000 a month, and that's still traveling every other month or so, internationally, probably a couple times a year. Like, that's not deprivation, right? That's living the life I want to live. So I said 3,000, and I created a spreadsheet because I like spreadsheets. Anybody who knows me, and what I thought I would need to hit on YouTube in order to be able to get to $2,000 a month from YouTube. Because if I'm getting $2,000 a month from YouTube, then that means I would more than likely have another source or two or 5 or 10 that create enough to fill that gap between 2,000 and 3,000, so that I would hit my goal of $100 a day. And I knew where I was going. I knew where I was, right? Because I had been off and on with the channel. I was getting around, I don't know, like very little in terms of like less than 1,000 views, I believe it was, per week before I was committed. I think I was getting about 130 a day for 300 videos on YouTube. And that was at the very end of October. So I needed to grow my minutes, not the views, the minutes watched, because that's the more important metric. They're both important, but that one has a slightly more prominent place and just marginally more important. And in my view, I need to grow at about 8% per week from the beginning of November until the end of March 2020. And the reason I picked March 2020 basically was because that's when I would get my bonus. Continue saving until the end of March 2020 when I would get a bonus. And at that point, that would have been for the prior year, I get the bonus, and that would also provide even more cushion so that if by the end of March 2020, it was getting $2,000 a month and something came up, I would still be fine. And everything has been going according to plan up until maybe mid-January, where the growth was multiples of 8% week over week. It was 25%, 50%, 32%, 34%, 36%, 20%. This is week over week growth, like crazy double-digit growth for like 10 weeks in a row. And then it slowed down, and then it went negative, and it's just been flat, fluctuating up until last week. Not this week that just ended, but the week before that. I had 11% week over week growth in terms of the total minutes watched. And then the week that just ended, right, today is the 10th, which is Sunday, so week ending on the 9th, yesterday, I had a negative growth. So I saw a drop by 1%, a slight drop. But when I dive in, so let me just show you this really quickly. This is what I put together. I need about 1 million minutes watched per month by the end of March 2020 to get to about $2,000 a month, around a $2 CPM, in order to be able to get there, to get to $2,000 a month. $2 CPM is basically how many dollars you make per 1,000 views. So getting minutes watched of 1 million or a 250,000 per week should yield the results of around $500 a week, which would be $2,000 a month. And obviously, I know there's a lot of variability. So this is where I started in terms of minutes watched at the end of October. This is the actual number. So you get to see these are the numbers I was just mentioning here. Crazy growth up until week number 10, right? And I only saw a little bit of growth here, but I did hit 18,000. Then you can see it's just been stagnant up until here. It was drop 2%, drop 1%, drop 1%, up 3%, drop 1%, up or down 3%, and then I was up 12%, right? And then this past week I dropped 1.25. So I'm still ahead of track. Like if you saw the actual, whoops, right here, like I'm at 18.6, right? So the column right here, this is what the projected is to be on track to hit it by the end of March 2020. And if you look right between here and here is at the beginning of August. So this is where I currently am. I'm on track for the end of July. And that means that between now and the end of July, I could not grow the channel at all and I would still be on track. However, I don't obviously plan on doing that. But even though I had a weekly drop in the numbers, once you dig in a little bit deeper, if you compare the first 9 days of, basically the first 8 days of March with the last 8 days of February, there's actually a 10% increase in terms of the views, right? So if you look at, this is just my studio. This is the YouTube studio. This is my channel. This is the studio beta. So I'm learning how to use this more efficiently because it's a beta, but at some point it's going to turn into the actual studio that we all have to use. So this is for March up until the 9th. It says the 9th, but as you can see right here, this is only up to the 8th. The 9th, the data is not in there yet. So this is the number of impressions per day. But if you look at the total number of views is up 10% relative to the last 8 days of February, the 20th to the 28th. It was 10.8 versus 11.9. So even though the weekly numbers are down, right? I had a 1.25% drop for the numbers that I'm tracking in terms of the minutes watched on YouTube. I'm actually up. And another interesting thing here that I wanted to point out is the total number of impressions. So with Studio Beta for YouTube, it shows you the impressions. It's basically got a funnel. So you can see what the impressions are, and then what the click-through is from the impressions, and then the watch time from those impressions. So it starts with the impressions, right? Like everybody's seeing your shit. Like they'll see your thumbnail and they'll see your tagline or your title or whatever, and then they'll click through. So mine is 5.3 for my click through. So given that I know this data, right, and it's on a large amount of impressions, right? There's 125,000 impressions so far this month, and it's only 8 days into the month. I have more data to use to make that better, right? So adding in thumbnails. This is your first time here, make sure you press that subscribe button, by the way. But if you look at the little icon, you go back to my channel, you see that the vast majority of the videos that I publish don't have any special or clickable, I guess you could say, thumbnails. So working on the thumbnails is something I can focus on over this next month to help improve the click-through on that. To increase the, you know what I mean, out of 125,000, if I have, so it's 122.9 times 0.053, so that's about 6,500 views from the impressions. Now, right, because that's a large number of impressions, right? So if you take the same number, but say I could get it up to 6%, right? Then that's 7, right? 7.3 versus, what was the other one? 6.5. And you're like, oh, that's not that much. But literally, it's not creating more content. It's being more effective with what is already there. Because I'm already getting 125,000 impressions. Like, that's the number of people that are seeing my shit. Now, the people that are actually clicking through to watch it, that's where I have the opportunity right now. So going from a 5.3% click-through to watch versus, so that's what it currently is. If I can bump that up, maybe by like a 0.1% week over week for the next few weeks till I can get up to a 6% click-through or 7% click-through, that even though I might not be able, I haven't been, even if impressions didn't grow over that same 7-week period, the total number of views and total number of watch time would increase just because the thumbnail is more appealing and it will drive more traffic through, if that makes sense. Plus, when you stack on top of that, if it's 7 weeks and I'm doing an average of, say, 20 videos per week, sometimes use 140 videos. So 140 more, and it's probably going to be more than that, but 140 more videos on top of that, it just compounds itself. So that, say, instead of 125,000 impressions, maybe in 7 weeks I'll have 250,000 impressions. And if I'm increasing the click-through, that also drives more, right? Because you have new impressions, but you also have a higher click-through. So both of those are just going to increase the throughput on the funnel, if that makes any sense. And another thing that I wanted to cover on those results, even though I'm down week over week on the tracker I have, if you look at the total number of views, so that's the total number of views for February divided by 28 days. So you're getting an average per day. And then the same thing for so far this month. Remember, 8 days into the month. And you compare the daily average, right? So when you're part of the way through the month, you can't just compare the numbers, right? Because February has 28 days, March has 31 days. So you're not going to be able to get an accurate representation of how you're doing unless you can standardize that. That's what they do in finance. So one of the ways you can standardize that is put it on the same terms, right? So we're going to put it on daily terms. And so what we do is we take the total views for the month of February divided by 28 days gives our daily view count. Now we can do the same thing with our daily view count for March, even though there's a different quantity of days. So when you do that, I'm up 12% for the views, 12.17% so far in the month on the views. If you do the same thing, standardize it, but do it for the minutes watched, I'm up 3.12%. So before I move on to the next metric, what does that tell you about the data, other than that Sam talks really quickly? And I'll repeat what that was. So the views are up 12% and watch time is up 3%. What does that tell you about the data? It tells you that people are watching less of the videos. Maybe the content isn't as good. Maybe I put out a very good video, or maybe I had put out some longer videos last month relative to this month, or the videos that are popular this month are the ones where I'm doing a little bit of posing, so maybe, and those sometimes are around a minute long, so maybe those are driving more on the views, and that's what's driving down the average watch time. But until you dig into the numbers, you're not going to know some of these things. Also, another very interesting stat that I found in here is when you take a look at the total number of subscribers, this is pretty intriguing for me because this is growing at a completely different rate than the views and the watch time. Initially, and I don't know if this is just like a huge like lag relative to the watch time and views, but the watch time and views were going up, you know what I mean, at a 35, 45 degree angle for the first, 2 months basically. And then they started like leveling out a little bit. But the subscribers were coming up at maybe like a 10-degree or 15-degree angle in terms of how many new subscribers I was getting. I think I was getting maybe around 4 on average per day in December, and then maybe around 4.7 in January. But the subscriber growth on a daily, right, we have to standardize it, remember? So in March we have 51, 8 days into the month, and in the month of February we had 142. So you standardize that, meaning you divide it by the period. So in February there's 28 days, so you take 142 subscribers divided by 28 days, that gives you an average daily subscriber amount of how many subscribers are subscribing to your channel on average per day. And you do the same thing for March. For March, so far, 8 days in, is 6.38 subscribers on average per day are subscribing. In the month of February, it was 5.07. So if you make that into a growth rate, that's over a 25.5% growth in terms of subscribers. So meaning the average number of subscribers subscribing to the channel per day grew from the month of February to the month of March by more than 25%, which is pretty crazy because that's growing at 25%, but the views were growing at 12% and the watch time is growing at 3%. So there's some discontinuity there that I still have to dive into the numbers to get a better handle or understanding of what is going on. There's another metric that I can also look at in and I haven't figured out how to find it on the computer, so I have to look at it on my phone, is the total the amount of minutes watched by subscribers. So when you look at the watch time from subscribers, the vast majority of the watch time is actually coming from people who are not subscribed. Back in maybe December, I had around a 5%. So out of 100,000 minutes watched, we'll say, for